Are the Grizzlies going to trade Ja Morant? And if they do, could he end up in Phoenix? Let's unpack it right here. This is Erik Ruby for PHNX Suns. And to be honest with you, if you told me 2 months ago I'd be talking about Kevin Durant and Ja Morant swapping teams, I would have called you crazy. But due to recent events and recent reporting with Ja Morant, I'm not going to say it looks likely, but it looks more likely than it would have a couple months ago. So let's unpack what could be one of the many possibilities moving forward for the Phoenix Suns as they try to retool, rebuild, or just revamp their current roster. So, of course, this all starts with the trade deadline. And, of course, the Suns reportedly shopping Kevin Durant, him not being too happy with it. And then, of course, the myriad of reports that followed afterwards saying that Kevin Durant, it's just a matter of time. He's going to want out of Phoenix. So we don't know for sure. Of course, KD has not come out and publicly requested a trade. He has talked about how much he loves to play in Phoenix. The locker room is not toxic. And you know what? Like, I do believe him in all of those fronts. I don't think the locker room is toxic, and I do believe that he loves playing in Phoenix. But I also think that you'd be naive as an NBA fan and to look at whatever has happened in the league, whether it's Luka, whether it's Kevin Durant trades before, whether it's when you start to see these breadcrumbs being dropped by players and teams, even if it's through the media and if it's not all 100% right, usually it leads you down a certain path. Like, we knew that Jimmy Butler was growing unhappy before it really got to that point, right? We knew that Kevin Durant was probably going to want out of Brooklyn and to the Phoenix Suns before Kevin Durant ended up with the Phoenix Suns. So let's unpack this. Howard Beck reporting earlier today that NBA executives believe that the Grizzlies could potentially look to move Ja Morant this summer. He said, and I want to quote this just to make sure that, there's context there. I'm constantly checking in with executives around trade deadline about okay, what we saw, what we didn't see, what's next. And in this league, you're always on the lookout for who's the next wave of stars that are going to get dealt, right? Somebody out of the blue said, keep an eye on Ja Morant this summer. I'm just saying it's one of those things I'm just keeping an eye on if they were to flame out early. Now, I think at first you think to yourself, why would the Grizzlies want to trade a player like Ja Morant, right? The number 2 pick in the 2019 draft, not too far into his career. But I think if they flame out due to his availability, and quite frankly, he has dropped in production so far this year, even throughout his injuries. With right now, he's out with a knee injury as well, but he averaged 20.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7.4 assists. And when you watch him, he still has that ability to take over, right? He still has the ability to fill it up. When he played Phoenix most recently, he dropped 26 points, 6 assists, 7 rebounds. That's a good guard. But if this iteration of the Memphis Grizzlies doesn't find success, let's say they flame out in the first round of the playoffs. Let's say that maybe the Grizzlies are looking at the future of Ja Morant and looking at what type of super max extensions young players like that are going to get in the league going forward. They're preparing to pay Jaren Jackson Jr. this summer. Maybe they just don't think it's tenable. Maybe they don't think that this fit would be right for the Memphis Grizzlies. And you're going to see GMs and you're going to see executives kind of step out beyond where I think fans normally would think they would go as far as team building changes because of the CBA, because of the second apron and the first apron and all of the restrictions. I think you're going to see a lot of teams try to get out ahead of this. Now, I'm not saying this is the Nico Harrison effect or the disease spreading around where you're going to trade one of your young stars, but I do think that Ja Morant and Luka are on very, very different levels, right? So from a Memphis perspective, if you don't feel like Ja Morant is the best fit for your current team and you are still trying to win now, because Memphis has been a good team rather consistently since Ja has been drafted, and you look at Kevin Durant and think to yourself, there's still 2, 3, 4, hell, maybe 5 more years of good production, 2 or 3 of elite level production out of this guy who has not missed a step as he continues to age into his late 30s. Maybe he's a better fit, right? Maybe you want to go jumbo lineup. KD at the 3, Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4, Edie at the 5. Maybe you move Edie to the bench, but KD at the 4, Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5. But the reality is you're probably not watching this wondering about Memphis's fit. You're probably wondering to yourself, why on earth would the Phoenix Suns do that? I think there's a couple reasons. Reason number one is if Kevin Durant does come to you in the offseason and says he needs to be moved, you do want to get future draft capital, absolutely. And I do believe in a trade, and I worked it out. It would have to be Kevin Durant for Ja Morant and John Conchar. And I think in that trade, the Memphis Grizzlies would still have to attach some sort of draft draft compensation, because despite Ja Morant being significantly younger than Kevin Durant is still a significantly better player, and I would say still projects to be a better player with how Morant has been performing this past season. The next couple of seasons, he projects to still be better than Ja Morant. You're giving up the best asset. You're giving up the top 10 player of all time. So you want to get picks back. You want to get draft compensation back, especially considering you've mortgaged your future for this iteration of the team. But you also want a win now piece. It's what was appealing about the Jimmy Butler trade when you were trying to get him and send KD to the Warriors, is you also got Kuminga and some draft compensation. You competed now and you stayed afloat for years to come. So if Ja Morant were to get traded to Phoenix, you would have a quote-unquote star point guard to pair alongside Devin Booker. You do not have a similar overlap in skills like you do with Beal and Booker. Ja Morant is much more downhill type of guard, explosive type of guard, even though he's lost a little bit of his bounce as of late. He still can be a much better fit next to Devin Booker as not a true point guard, but more of a traditional point guard. It could still play off the ball as well. I think you still have some overlap between the two, but it's more of a natural pairing between Morant and Booker. And then you bring Beal off the bench, and you might have one of the most potent, if not the most potent backcourt combinations in the league between starting and bench. Now, of course, you're missing Kevin Durant, so you're hoping to maybe fill out a couple other pieces there. But if KD wants to be moved, if KD wants to be put out of Phoenix and wants to go to another team, Memphis could be a team that he looks at and says, I can be a missing piece there. I can help take them over to the hump to a championship. And Phoenix can look at the Grizzlies and say, hey, maybe that's a piece that we could take back, retool around Morant, retool around Booker, maybe try to find a suitor for Beal, and freshen up our front court depth, considering you just lost Kevin Durant. I'm not saying the Suns would get better, but if they're backed into a corner and they need to make a trade, the Grizzlies could be a possible path. Let me know what you think. Ja Morant and John Conchar for Kevin Durant. Of course, you're going to have to throw picks in there as well. How many would it take? Is this a stupid idea? Do you love this idea? Do you just want to hold on to Kevin Durant for as long as possible? Let us know down in the comments below. Make sure you are subscribed to PHNX Sports right here on YouTube. Catch our Suns show live, of course, 5 days out of the week, pregame, postgame, live shows, and of course, we cover everything else around here. Diamondback season is heating up. Cardinals are deep into their offseason grind. Wildcats and Sun Devils also going on as we approach March Madness. So if you love college hoops as well, we have you covered all right here on PHNX Sports. Hit that notifications bell, and of course, we'll see you next time on more PHNX Suns.